Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to another episode of the Tigers Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Schulte, and we're going to get right into it here. We are less than 10 episodes away from our 100th episode. I thought I would pass that last year because in season 1, I did 50 episodes, but I also tried to cover every game of spring training, and I came to the conclusion that that just wasn't happening. This turned into a weekly podcast very quickly during spring training of 2021, and it's been that way ever since. So with that, we're going to go ahead and step into some injury news. Alex Faedo was sent down to AAA after a start on Sunday, a good start against the Padres. No injury situation there, but Mason Englert is on the 15-day injured list due to hip tightness, and I believe it's his left hip. And this was after going two and a third innings on Saturday and giving up 9 runs to San Diego. It really wasn't pretty, and so precautionary measure, they sent him down or sent him to the injured list. And they're going to do some treatment on it. He'll get some rehab starts. Basically, in all honesty, what this does is it assures him, he really should be thankful for this because it assures him that he will stay a Tiger. They cannot send him down to the minors. Well, they can, if it's as a reliever or if it's as an injury, if it's for rehab. So let's say he goes 15 days. It'll probably be longer than that. The move was retroactive to July 23rd, so that's a thing that happened, and so he's going to be on the injured list. Then he's going to go down probably to Toledo and do some rehab work. But depending on how long his stay on the injured list is, if he stays until the end of August on the injured list, which is possible. Remember, Edwardo Rodriguez was supposed to be on the 10-day injured list. That was at the end of May. He didn't come back until the beginning of July. So it's very probable that he could go he's on the injured list retroactive till the 23rd. He could possibly stay there until the end of the season with rehab starts and everything like that. Or not rehab starts, but rehab appearances and everything like that. So what they've done is they've assured themselves that they're going to keep this guy and not have to offer him back to Texas for $50,000. So that's a good thing for the Tigers. It's a good thing for Mason Englert. And everybody's happy all around, except for Mason Englert probably doesn't feel too good with a sore hip. So that's a thing. Spencer Turnbull made a rehab start tonight in West Michigan. That was his first rehab start. He'll probably do 2 starts there and 3 starts in Toledo. 2 scoreless innings, and we don't know much about that other than the 2 scoreless innings. Not anything. No comment about the stuff as far as what he was throwing, how well he was throwing, anything like that. So that's a thing. So no idea as to what the timetable is for Spencer Turnbull. Probably early August from what everybody's saying. That may be hastened by the possible departures of Eduardo Rodriguez and or Michael Lorenzen, one or both. Rodriguez pitched tonight and was so-so. So we'll see what happens between now and August 1st. That's next Tuesday. This is being recorded, of course, July 25th, 2023. Will probably be posted tomorrow, the 26th. I'll probably save this and then render it out tomorrow and post it. So that's going to be a thing. With all that being said, those are the big things that are going on with the injury situations. Austin Meadows, still no news on him since June 24th, I think it was, or 20th or something like that. So they really don't have much of an idea what's going on with him. And you know what? It is what it is. At this point, you just don't mess with a guy's mental health. So he may come back, he may not. We may never see him play as a Tiger again. And if we did, or if we don't, it's a pretty disappointing trade for Al Avila. But then again, we're used to that because that's what Al Avila did. So with all that being said, I don't know that the people in Tampa knew what was going on with Austin Meadows. I don't think that there was any problems before he came to Detroit. I just think that, in all honesty, look, when you're in Tampa, you're a winner. When you play in Tampa, you're playing for a winning squad, and winning makes you feel good, and losing doesn't. And they lose a lot in Detroit right now, and that doesn't make you feel good, and that can lead to some mental issues. So in all honesty, I don't know that he would have had these problems in Tampa, or if they'd traded him to, say, Seattle last year, or Houston, or LA, the Dodgers, or somewhere like that. But they traded him to Detroit. They're getting the better end of that deal. Isaac Paredes is an all-star. Austin Meadows is sitting at home. So there you go. Speaking of trades, we're going to get into that because that's what this episode is really going to focus on. First and foremost, Detroit played so-so over the last week. They finished a series sweep of San Francisco yesterday, a series that started in April and finished yesterday. They finished that sweep with a 5-1 win. Dropped 2 out of 3 to San Diego over the weekend. But before that, they were in Kansas City and took 3 out of 4 from Kansas City. This, of course, on the heels of a series win in Seattle. So since the end of the All-Star break, since the start of the second half, Detroit is 7-5, which is kind of the way they've been all year. So look for Eduardo Rodriguez and Michael Lorenzen to be traded. Now, the question is, what do you get for those guys? Because really, in all honesty, Eduardo Rodriguez has 2 options. First and foremost, I do believe he's got a 10-team no-trade clause in his contract. So he may have said, I don't want to be traded to the Yankees, the Red Sox, this team, that team. At the time, the teams that he may have not wanted to be traded to were probably not doing very well, like the Orioles or the Marlins. Now, he might be like, hey, you know what? The Marlins are a contender. The Orioles are in first place. I'll go back to the American League East. I don't mind. I did okay there, especially considering Baltimore's ballpark now. So he's not only got a no-trade clause, but he's got an opt-out at the end of the year. So whoever trades him could get him for another $49 million over the next 3 years, or he could be a rental, depending on how he wants to go, where he wants to go, what he wants to do. Michael Lorenzen is a definite rental. Detroit only has him for the rest of the year. So if they trade him, then they don't have to worry about him staying with that team unless he re-signs as a at the end of the season. So that kind of hamstrings the Tigers in a lot of ways, because what are you willing to pay for a guy who is going to either not sign with you at the end of the year or might sign with you at the end of the year, but for a pretty high price? What are you willing to pay for a guy who right now has $49 million left over the next 3 years on his contract, but could walk away from you at the end of the season? Sure, he could get you to the playoffs. He could get you into the World Series. But then after that, he could just turn around and say, sorry, man, I'm out because I can get more money. So that's what you're looking at. That's what you're concerned about if you're Scott Harris, because the Jimenez for Malloy deal is a really good deal. It looks like it's going to produce for the Tigers in the long term. But what you want is something that's going to produce for you next year. And I don't know that anybody's going to be giving up a major league ready hitter for next year, when at the very least they're going to have to face you for 3 games. And if you trade in the league, you're looking at least 6 or 7 games, depending on the schedule. So if you're the Yankees and you want Eduardo Rodriguez, do you trade one of your AAA prospects for a guy who might walk away at the end of the year? And if he doesn't walk away, then yeah, you've got 3 years of control. But now you got to see the Tigers and that AAA prospect that's possibly going to be playing next year on the big league club 6 games next year. And then 6 games the year after, and 6 games the year after that. Now, you're not going to trade him in your own division. Cleveland's not going to get him. Minnesota's not going to get him. Although Detroit did trade with Minnesota for Sawyer Gipson-Long last year when Michael Fulmer got traded to Minnesota. But that was kind of a quick fix for nothing trade, in all honesty, because Sawyer Gipson-Long just got promoted to AAA this year, like a month ago, not even a month ago. He had his first AAA start last week. So he clearly wasn't a very high-ranked prospect. Thank you, Alavila. We appreciate that one too. So at the end of the day, what are you going to get? And where do you go? And who do you trade with? Because do you want to see Eduardo Rodriguez next year and in 2025 and 2026 for another team? Him saying, hey, you guys traded me. Or are you willing to say, we're going to take the chance that we're going to trade you and then you're going to walk away from that other $49 million. Sure, you might re-sign with that team that we traded you to, but it ain't going to be for $49 million over the next 3 years. It's not going to be 3 years at $16.5 million. It's going to be maybe 5 or 6 years at 18 to 20. And we don't want to have to pay that. So there's a lot that goes into that trade, specifically Eduardo Rodriguez. Michael Lorenzen, you're not going to get much for him. Look, he's a guy that he'll make maybe 10 starts for whoever you trade him to. 12. So let's be realistic as to what they're going to get for him. Not a lot. Just not a lot. You're not going to find your starting catcher in that deal. You're not going to find your starting right fielder in that deal, or your starting second baseman next year in that deal. You're just not. So at the end of the day, it's something to look at. It's something to think about. And if you're the Tigers, you've got a lot of issues on the table that you need to worry about, and a lot of things that you want to consider. And you don't have much time. So you can be certain Scott Harris is on the phone right now. Jay Sartori, Sam Minson, those guys are doing their homework. They're talking to people. They're watching scouting reports, things of that nature. They're doing their homework. They're doing what they have to do, and hopefully they can come up with something that's beneficial to both squads, whichever team trades for Rodriguez and or Lorenzen. And it's a good trade for both, because then if you do that, then those teams are more willing to trade with you in the future. So you kind of want to be a good trade partner if you can. Now, you can be a good trade partner and get fleeced like Alavila did most of the time, or you could be a good trade partner and have trades that work out on both sides. So those are your options. If you're Scott Harris, I know what they're wanting. They're wanting to be the trade partner that the trade works out for both sides, if not for them specifically. So that's something to think about there. With that, I want to thank Anchor for distributing the podcast. You can catch us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. I'd prefer that you check us out on YouTube, though. You can do that at youtube.com/@TB Podcast. You can catch us on Mastodon, TB Podcast, at tweescake.social. That's TWEESECAKE.social. You can also catch us on Twitter at Podcast Tigers. You can email us, tigersbaseballpodcast@gmail.com. It's the world's longest email address, and I'm proud of that. With that, we will say goodbye for now. We'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening, everybody, and as always, go Tigers.